Welcome to Space Uncensored, the podcast where we demystify space and uncover the untold stories of the industry. I'm your host, Andrea Prazakova, and the founder of Space Uncensored. And I'm really thrilled today to have an extraordinary guest with me, a powerhouse of a woman, Deborah Sass. Let me tell you a little bit about Deborah. Deborah is a founder and CEO of SpaceVrse, which is a super cool company, and it's a community and a platform which focuses on making the space industry more accessible and engaging for everyone, for people like me or people like you who just listening to the podcast. She's also co-founder and co-CEO of Space Hero, which is a movement which aims to democratize space travel through a global competition that is offering a $55 million ticket, I think, for non-astronauts to spend 10 days in space. I'm sure there'll be a long queue. And she's obviously, big seasoned executive in the entertainment industry. And I'm sure Deborah will talk about it. With over 25 years of experience, she worked with giants like Amazon, iTunes, Shazam, Spotify. With her diverse background, she also structured numerous international strategic partnerships and raised capital for innovative startups. So before I hand over, I also want to say that she's an incredible champion for democratizing space, a TEDx speaker, and a member of Global Future Council for Space at the World Economic Forum, an advisor to organizations like Interstellar Foundation, LifeShip, and Astras. So, Deborah, such a great pleasure to have you here. I know I can't stop smiling because I'm so excited about our interview today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to talk to you. I am a big fan of yours. In fact, I might be the president of your fan club.
Oh my goodness, look at this. So let's dive straight into it. I alluded a little bit about, what your history was, and you have such an impressive career, obviously, in media, entertainment, and space. So what I would like for the audience to understand and to hear from you is what inspired you to move from entertainment to space, and how does your background in the media has helped to shape SpaceVrse and Space Hero?
Great question. I always like to start with something a little bit funny. So, how I went from entertainment to space is very simple. My business partner called me about 7 years ago, my then business partner, and he said one sentence. He said, Deborah, I want you to help me launch Space Hero. I said, Hi, what is it? And he said it's a global casting show giving away the biggest prize on television, a $55 million ticket for a 10-day stay on the ISS. And I said, Andrea, holy moly, sign me up. I'm in. I've just got one question. And he said, what? And I said, what's the ISS? Because back then,
I
seven
love that.
years ago, I mean, you and your audience gets it because you know what the International Space Station is. Back then, 7 years ago, I didn't know that that was the word for the short word for the International Space Station. And I remember thinking, space? What do I know about space? Nothing. But what I understood was consumer, technology, entertainment, and how to take a very complicated and perhaps technical product or idea and make it more mainstream. So that's actually how I went from entertainment to space, because my then business partner was literally all about entertainment with me. We worked on similar projects together, and he came up with this fabulous idea. And so Space Hero, it's still going. I'm still very hopeful that we will be able to fund that $55 million ticket. We were only able to raise just under 8 million, and it wasn't enough. So I took that community we built over many years and I moved into SpaceVrse, the universe for space. So everything you can read, everything you can listen to, everything you can learn, everything you can watch, and of course, anything you might want to buy, but only in the space industry.
I think it's so fascinating. And I was thinking when as you were talking, I thought, Space Hero. This is like a big brother watching you on ISS, which I think people would love that. Imagine, and you just spoke now about SpaceVrse and how your vision is really to make space industry more accessible. Can you go a little bit deeper on the vision for SpaceVrse and how do you build that community and around space exploration and around the new space economy actually overall? Because you mentioned what you can buy and experience, so it's not only the space exploration, so that we can understand and feel what it is.
It's a great question, and thank you. So, I think the main vision for SpaceVrse is kind of coming from how I viewed the space industry
Hmm.
7 years ago. So, I didn't come from the space industry. I'm not a scientist. I'm not military. I'm not a tech person. And actually, I don't work for the government, and I never wanted to be an astronaut. Don't tell anybody else that, because everybody in the space industry at one point wanting to be an astronaut. But what I realized is that the space industry, Andrea, is so unrelatable to normal people. And it is
Mm,
actually the most inaccessible industry in the world. And so I always tell the story that when you are 6, you want to be an astronaut. And if you have the brains and the access and you continue with that dream, you eventually might actually build a rocket or work for NASA or one of the other 70 plus government run space programs around the world. But if you're not the smartest person in the room, if you're not a person that comes from money or access or, let's say,
mm, mm.
non-emerging market, then you're probably not going to be able to get into the space industry for many reasons. And that was the key to me. Another really critical piece, Andrea, is that we don't realize as people from, let's call it the global south or the non-emerging markets, we don't realize how much access we really have. When you go to places
Right.
Africa, where I know you've been, when you go to places like the Middle East, where you are now, when you go to places
Mm,
like Latin America, people don't realize how much enthusiasm is there for space. Here's a very interesting data point. There are 55 countries in Africa, 24 government space agencies in 24 countries.
wow. And you engage with all the agencies, or how would they get involved? I think would be really interesting, to. So let's say I am a space agency in Nigeria,
Angola,
right? Or
Nigeria, they have a very big
exactly.
station.
So how would I be involved with SpaceVrse? What role would I play, and what could the visitors of SpaceVrse or the customers of SpaceVrse, have from this connection?
Very good question. So SpaceVrse want to, as you know, democratize the access to space. But what we have to do is build the community. And by the way, we have over 10 million subscribers already. So we're
Wow.
doing pretty well to build that community. And our community maps out the world. So if there are
Mhm.
1.5 billion people in Africa and 300 million in the US, that's probably the same demographic profile of our community too.
Right. Right.
So we are very clear on how we want to structure that. Now, how does a space agency get involved? Well, I've actually spoken to every head of almost every space agency in the world. And at the moment, we are providing a platform. It's completely free for any business and any government organization in the world to share their, whether it's a competition, whether it's marketing, whether it's promotion, whether it's just an announcement, whether it's something to do with something they're building in the future or something they've done in the past. When they go on podcasts, when the leaders of those government agencies, when they get interviewed, if they want to sell a t-shirt, if they want to do a webinar, if they want to do an astronaut, a virtual
Mm.
astronaut ask me anything, or a virtual pizza or a quiz night, they can just access our platform. Most of them know about it. If there's anybody in your audience that doesn't, they can simply contact us at SpaceVrse and we'll be happy to assist.
I will put obviously all the links also to your websites and everything inside. I like what you said about that, people don't relate to space because they don't understand it. And it's such a area which, I mean, you've been 7 years, me only like four or something. And obviously I had no idea either. And it's so fascinating. And as you spoke, I thought about the movie which Thorn, I think his name is Thorn Hoffman, who did the Fortitude movie, which came out, I think, just a couple of months ago, which shows
Boston,
all the
Boston, yes. Yeah, yes, the
Thorsten
German
Hoffman,
guy.
yes,
Yes.
exactly. And I loved how, it's in the space like you are trying to do to bring it to the people like myself, where he goes through all the different industries, right? And shows from retail to food, to agriculture. And I think it's really fascinating. So we need people like yourself, and so that we can bring it together. I want to go one step back to space here, if that's okay for you, because I think people must have been really curious about uh, uh, how would it even work, that having a global competition for non-astronauts, and maybe there are people who would like to join and fund it. So how, you mentioned a little bit how did it a little bit become to be, uh, and that this funding stop, but is it something that you still continue? Is it project that you still feel that it will happen in the future?
Oh my God, absolutely. I'm very passionate. I still remain a major shareholder in the company. I just don't run the day to day anymore. And I think with something like Space Hero, think about it like every business you've never heard of before. We didn't have a product to sell, we didn't have any revenue. It's never been done before.
Done before?
And
Mm,
as you say, how do you do a global televised show? Well, actually, it's not that difficult because you've got YouTube, you've got Netflix, and even now I can be watching exactly the same show in my native language that you're watching at exactly the same show. You're watching it, but you're watching it in your native language in your
mm,
so global platforms exist. We had absolutely great encouragement and much dialogue with the broadcasters and the streaming services. The real challenge for us for 5 years was the institutional money. And so,
mm,
by going to a traditional, institutional, centralized organization like a BlackRock, like a Sequoia, like a Founders Fund, I mean, I can name many, many that I spoke to, they just didn't get it. What people
mm,
watch, hang on, I don't. So, and I tried to explain, it's just like American Idol, except the prize is going to space and it's global.
yes.
That's what the world is, very global. So,
Yeah.
Space Hero is still very close to my heart. I'm a big supporter. I still speak to the people who run it on a day-to-day basis every other week. But SpaceVrse is something I'm really passionate about moving forward because what I found in 7 years is if you're in the space industry and you want to know about rockets, you'll know where to go. You can go to Everyday Astronaut, you can go to all these like specific YouTube channels and
Mm,
podcasts and all sorts of things. But imagine you don't know anything about the space industry.
mm,
Like the millions of people out there, Andrea, that in some ways, like you and me, we didn't come from the space industry. We came
no.
the outside. And when you come from the
Mm,
outside, it's very clear that they have these amazing, amazing products and innovation, but they don't have an ability to communicate that outside of the space industry, which is why
mm,
SpaceVrse can't fail. It's why we've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of private and government and academia and individuals that basically run the space industry already partner with us to provide content, to provide interviews, to provide exciting things happening in the future in their domains.
mm. I like that you mentioned the academia, and obviously, you met my kids, right? So you know that that's something which is so important to me, and I wonder, in the future, how do you see space fairs contributing and partnering also with educational organizations? Because I mean, I can tell you, despite the fact that one of my sons wants to be in the space industry as an astrophysicist, they don't really learn much about space, new space economy, and that actually any job you do on Earth, you can do within the new space economy. How do you see, because with you having all of these connections, right, you are almost like a perfect partner to a Ministry of Education or to a private school. How do you see that, growing in the future?
We are already in dialogue and have partnerships with all the private universities that offer space programs. There's not so many of them. We're also
Mm,
partnered with all of the analog astronaut training companies. There's 8 of them in the world. And we have actually started now talking to future universities. I can tell you, if Peter Diamandis, who is the founder of Singularity University, if he ever hears
university.
your podcast, I would love to speak to him about not only blockchain, Bitcoin, but also the university. I think that the learning criteria and the learning protocols in your kids' generation will be very different to what it was with our generation. I believe
Mm,
that the structure of the education system as is completely broken because kids come out of school and they are useless. Great if they want to be a lawyer and they're very single focused, but they don't know how to get a mortgage and they don't know how to sign up for things and they don't know how to do common sense things and they sure as hell don't know anything about space. So I think by making the space industry more accessible and making it more relatable, and I like to say, let's make the space industry a bit more sexy and a bit more pop culture. Because if people like me who come from the entertainment business can see all this possibility after meeting all the people that run the industry, imagine what these young people in
mm.
high school, in middle school will be like mind blowing, which is why SpaceVrse has so many partners who are both companies and individuals to tell their story, to make it more relatable.
Yeah, I really agree with you. I think that there is a great opportunity to partner with schools, and one of the areas which you touched on, it's something which I got introduced just last week. So I was listening to a TEDx talk by a lady by the name of Emily Wopniak, right? She's an author and so on, and she talks about you spoke about these specialists, right? And she spoke about people who have multiple potentialites. It's a bit of a mouthful of word, multi-potentialites. And it's about people who are curious about different things
Mhm.
and can do multiple different things and throughout their careers can navigate from entertainment to space to, you name it. And I think that what you're doing with SpaceVrse touches really beautifully how they can open doors to many of these multi-potentialites because people just by being exposed maybe become curious and maybe they maybe become a lawyer but maybe they become a lawyer of
Space lawyer.
a space lawyer, which is really really critical, right? And it's missing, so I think it's really really it's really interesting. It's a fascinating talk as well, and now I identify as a multi-potentialite. It's like my own definition. I really like it. I think you are multi-potentialite as well. We should start a club of multi-potentialites actually.
I think
you
I
know
need to say it first.
I know it's very difficult, and I promise I wasn't practicing. Uh, so
Maybe.
I know that SpaceVrse, you really heavily focus on inclusivity and accessibility, and you are a female entrepreneur, you are a woman of color, and you are a super strong advocate of supporting diverse voices in the space, not only in the space industry but everywhere. Can you share a little bit more about how you paving, the way for women in the space industry or in the entrepreneurship space? And what steps can women take to get support or the efforts also to learn from you?
I'm excited to answer this question because I am leading by example. And the only way that we can change the paradigm is by doing and executing something meaningful. I know that my purpose in the rest of my career, let's say in the next decade is about making SpaceVrse successful to make many, many touch points. And one of the critical parts of your question in regards to a woman of color, imagine
Mm,
I live in Spain. I was raised in both the UK and Australia, and I lived in the US for a long time. I've had access to everything. If I wanted to be more educated, if I wanted to raise money, I mean, I have that access, and I also have a very strong personality. But imagine you're from Cameroon or Karachi or
mm,
Venezuela, and there aren't government space agencies. There's certainly not one in Pakistan or in Cameroon. There is actually one in Venezuela, run by a woman, and Amy is a very, very good advocate for this. So you have this opportunity to actually support people that don't get the global access by
mm,
bringing to a global brand. And our touch points, eventually, Andrea, SpaceVrse will be an organization that not just recruits, has interns across the industry, but at some point we would love to be able to set up a fund to actually invest in, again, the global south. So for me, it's really important that we focus on the Middle East, on Southeast Asia, on Africa, on Latam. I mean, on the places that aren't North America and aren't Europe, right?
mm,
Because both
mm,
America and Europe have loads of access to the space industry. But by focusing on the organizations that are supporting those communities on the grassroots level. And I said to you once when we first met that when I set up Space Hero, I did personally over 3,500 conference calls in over 100 countries. And every person I spoke to worked or ran or owned a space organization, whether it was
mm,
government, academia, or private. And every time I spoke to, and this was basically during COVID, by the way, so nobody was traveling anywhere. So I could sit on the phone and be in 5 different countries by the end of my day, and I haven't left my farm. And I remember saying to each person every time the call finished, introduce me to somebody else that you know that would benefit from understanding about what the Space Hero vision is. And that's how I grew my network without actually seeing anybody in real life.
mm,
Sat there and did this. But what that also showcased for me was the lack of access to anybody in those regions I've mentioned. I mean, most people don't even know there are 24 government run space agencies in 24 countries in Africa. There are 11 in Latin America. There are 14 in the Middle East. There are 18 in Southeast Asia. I mean, and India is only one, right? There are all these other countries. So
mm,
by encouraging people, by giving them a voice, the most important is having the community. When you have a community, you can answer the big questions because you can do it with a meaningful opportunity. And so now we have this community called SpaceVrse. We haven't
mhm,
launched it publicly yet, but we will have the opportunity to showcase. Think of it as a really big stage for everybody in the space industry for free. And that's really important. And the way that I've described it, and let's just spend 30 seconds on this for your audience, is SpaceVrse is like a mega mall. And on
mhm,
in the mega mall are 10 floors. And one floor is fashion, and one floor is legal, and one floor is technology, one floor is exploration, one floor is food. Just put the word space in front of all of those floors. And that's
mm,
exactly what we've done. We have categorized over 1,500 private government organizations in the space industry across the world. And we're
mm,
giving them the opportunity. So if it's all to do with space food, I mean, what do we know about space food? First of all, you can't create food for astronauts because there's like 300 of them, and that's not a business. But wouldn't it be cool to try food or stuff that is water free? Or ice cream that you have to rehydrate. There's loads of like gimmicky, cool things, but people don't know about it because they don't know what they don't know.
And I think, I like the example of a mega mall, and I like that you actually, finish on the food space, because I actually really believe that one of the superpowers of space is that, you know, space is how it operates, how we wish our planet would operate, right? Because people live on ISS, they are from different cultures, they recycle everything from the air they breathing, for the urine which comes out, everything goes. It's a fully circular uh, um, not economy in that space, but it's a fully circular system. And
Yeah.
some of the advancements which are made in food, and there are some really great, obviously, companies in US and in Europe and so on. Some of these are very nutritional, very easy to transport type of packages that could be brought to environments which are suffering from drought, which don't have access to food. And I think one of the big superpowers I see is that we should start to utilize all the different inventions which are made for space for Earth,
Hmm.
because there is so much done. I mean, especially in the whole recycling area, right, and circularity, which we don't do here, but we can do it in an ISS or in a closed environment. So, and I love the idea about the mega mall. I think it's really brilliant. It's like the Amazon of space,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, the Amazon of space.
But with lots of free stuff, right? So what I want people to be able to do, and what we are working on with a big team of people all around the world, is we're working on making a community. One, you don't have to download any apps. There's nothing you need to do. You don't have to pay for anything. You don't have to sign up. You just subscribe, or you go onto the YouTube channel, you go on to the Instagram channel, that all the different platforms is covered. And then if you want to look into food and space, or space food, then you just go to that floor, and there'll be videos, and there'll be podcasts, and there might be, and then you go a little bit further, and then it might say, hey, you watched that podcast. Did you want to buy that, I don't know, water-free toothpaste, or chocolates made for astronauts, or the dehydrated ice cream? If you wanted to buy it, then you can click here. If you want to go to their website and have, like, so it's almost like a big spider's web. We want to take you on a journey which we will curate to make it easy for you to understand it and keep going on that journey. Because right now the internet is so global and so
Yeah.
segmented and fragmented. It's just nice to bring it all together, and it's never been done before.
No, I really like it, and I think that uh, especially if I would be a teacher or a school, I think this is something which would be super fascinating also for kids to be able to access, and to look for people or industries or research papers or products, whatever they would, or entertainment, right? You mentioned that it's obviously now in beta version, it's not live yet. And I'm sure many people who are listening just are already Googling, or today people are not even Googling, they are chat GPTing, right? Uh,
Mhm.
uh, uh, when will it be launching? When can the audience expect for the 1.0 of SpaceVrse to, hit the floor?
Very soon, any week now.
So can they subscribe somewhere to get informed that
They
you
can.
are launching?
They can go to the YouTube channel, which is SpaceVrse without the E after the V, and they can subscribe. At the moment, the content is not the content that we will go live with, but there is a lot of content up there to keep all the algorithms moving.
Awesome. I want to take you back a little bit, because obviously your original career was in entertainment, and I think that if I'm in entertainment, probably nobody would make the connection. And you worked with some big companies, and I wonder, how did that background in entertainment help you to, build this community and the strategic partnership? How do you use the skills which you had from your previous life in this new space-related venture which you're doing?
I'll tell you a little story because it's a good way to explain it. When we first started Space Hero in 2018, um, my business partner at the time said to me, who do you know in the space industry? And I was like, nobody. Who do you know in the space industry? And he was like, nobody. And so I literally went online and I Googled space Industry Events Europe because I live in Spain.
Hmm.
What popped up was happening in a month's time. So this was in October, September, October, and this was happening in November.
Right.
It was called New Space Europe and Luxembourg. It was
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
said to my business partner at the time, you go and buy some tickets and get us flights, and I will set up the meetings. And this is what I learned when I was working in another industry, is that how do you get to be in an industry that you know nothing about and you know nobody in it, right? You do the hard graft. It's about the hustle. Now, I call it the hustle because I've been doing it for decades now. So literally, I go onto the website and I see 60 speakers, Andrea. And I will say, I know the organizers now quite well many years later, and they've definitely improved on this. But at the time, there was probably 49 white old guys who were speakers. There was a couple of people of color, and there was maybe 3 or 4 women. And I was like, wow, is this really the structure of the space industry? Anyway, regardless, 60 speakers. I found as much as I could on the internet. I didn't use Chat GPT. I don't even think it was really like up there
No.
years ago. But I went onto blogs, I went onto social media, I went everywhere, and I found as many emails as I could. I actually found 35 emails out of the 60 speakers. And I sent just one paragraph email to every one of those emails. And here is the data point, which was amazing. 28 people within 2 days wrote back to me. And all I said was, hi, my name's Deborah. I'm new to the space industry. I'm coming to your event next month. Can I buy you a coffee? That was it. 28 people replied. Now,
How awesome.
it was amazing. I was like, wow, this is not the media business who nobody replies to you ever. But those 28 people became employees, partners, investors, but all of them remain fans and friends now of mine, which is pretty amazing from just one. So it was really about going in there with an open mind, but building meaningful relationships. As I said, all of the people that I met, those 28 people, are still in my life today. And all of them, some of them are advisors in SpaceVrse.
Mm.
Many of them became investors in Space Hero. But what they did was they gave myself and my business partner an opportunity to talk about something they didn't know about, because doing
Mm. I
interviews
like that.
about space was super new, right?
It's Jamie Foxx says that he always says to his kids, "What is on the other side of fear? Nothing." And I think what you just described is a fantastic story, and I hope for our audience that they will like remember it. That you just try. Worst case scenario, they don't respond or they say no. Right? Nothing worse can happen in that, and I absolutely love it. And you had incredibly high hit ratio, I have to say. Um, really amazing. SpaceVrse, obviously, you formed many of these partnership, and I know you didn't launch yet, so I would understand. But can you give us a little bit of taste? What are some of the exciting collaboration which are coming and which are on the horizon?
Of course. How about almost every government space agency in Africa, many of the government space agencies in Latin America, and I can give you, in fact, I can give you a real example. The government industry in the space business is what I would consider old school. There's a lot of individuals in those space agencies, whether it's in South Africa, in SANSA, whether it's the Saudi Arabia and the KSA, if it's Venezuela, Paraguay, there are lots of amazing individuals, but they will be hindered by the government structure and the
Mm.
paradigm of what has happened before. The space industry is no longer run by just government. It is
Yeah,
very clear.
public-private.
There's a lot of PPPs, but there's also a lot of money going into private enterprise and going into the new economy. The new space economy is a
Yes.
thing, the real thing. So here is a really good example. You will have Ben on your podcast one day. LifeShip,
Oh, that's Ben, right?
that's Ben, that's right. You haven't
Ah,
you haven't
yeah.
had him on your You
I haven't.
not
I
yet.
have only women on my. No, no. I only have women on
Oh,
my
you only have
podcast.
women.
I
Oh,
am. Yeah, I am. I I have only women because
got
there
it.
are men everywhere. So,
So
but I am. I love what he's doing.
yeah, so this is like 23 and Me. So you get exactly like you would if you were doing your own DNA. You get a little thingy, you do the swab inside your
Swab.
mouth, then you send it back to Ben and his team, and they put it on a CubeSat, and it's only 1 million pieces of DNA is on a CubeSat that big. And he's actually sending one to space, I think, today. So he's sent 2 or 3 already. It's amazing. And it's a little bit of a gimmick, but it's something that's actually really cool. If you're into space, sending your DNA into outer space, deep space, onto the moon, why wouldn't you want to do that? So there are some really cool things that are really happening in the world. And we are talking to all of these people, and these are the types of products and announcements and even services that we will be offering to the SpaceVrse community.
Was just thinking, about a movie where Deborah sends her DNA to space, and like 15 years later, an alien comes from a different planet because they intercepted the package of Ben and they stole your DNA, and you come out of, like your twin comes out, and so. This, theoretically, somebody could take your DNA and clone you in space. But no, I think this is a really great examples. I want to jump a little bit into the World Economic Forum. I mean, Davos is just around the corner, and you obviously are a real champion of diversity, and you work with World Economic Forum, of a Global Future Council for Space. Could you explain a little bit what does the council do? What is your role, and how does it, what role does it play in the future of space exploration and also in the space industry overall?
So the funny story there is when I got invited 3 years ago to join the board, and I looked at the rest of the board, I was like, these people all have one, maybe two PhDs. Why the hell are they talking to me? I barely finished high school, and I'm a business person. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a military person. I'm not a lawyer, a space lawyer. And so it was really great. They invited me to be one of the business voices. So really talking about commerce,
Mm,
new space economy, but actually talking about how the normal person sees space from the outside, which of course is I'm a big advocate of that anyway. It's a very clear remit for WEF. We make global policy recommendations for almost every government in the world on their space strategy. We work with a lot of different government. We work with the sort of main 500 big companies in the world, the multinationals, and we provide input that's very, very specialized. So I am not one of these people, but the rest of the council are like deeply connected to the science world, the military world, the space debris world, the exploration. We even had an astronaut on one of the council the terms. So the council changes quite often. Every 2 to 4 years, you change your term. You don't actually go to Davos. Davos is really just for government employees. There are a lot of Davos adjacent programs that run.
programs, yes.
We work very much with specific government space agencies. For instance, last year they flew me over to India, where myself and one other person, in fact, he'll be very happy that I'm saying his name, Jeff Mamba. And Jeff Mamba, for your audience, is truly a rock star and one of the original pioneers of the space movement for
Mm,
new space movement. He was the creator of NanoRacks. NanoRacks is now part of Voyager. It's $100 million company. But Jeff Mamba and myself were the only non-Indians in the room. And we were talking about our experience and our understanding of how you can structure deals globally, how you can raise money, et cetera, et cetera. Both Jeff and I have very similar. He has a lot more experience than me. He's been in the industry for 30 or 40 years. I've only been in it.
mhm.
But he's a very, very nice person, a very, very, very intelligent guy. So the World Economic Forum is a very interesting behemoth. I think that's the right way of describing it. And the access points to being part of it is also quite unusual. We do an annual general meeting every year in Dubai in October, and there's 450 people from all over the world, and they are all specialists in various parts of industry. Mine is the space, and there is everything from food security to vaccinations to education,
Mm,
AI to the metaverse. I mean, there are 40, I think it's 35 other councils. So it's a great opportunity for anybody to, they put out publications, they work very closely with Deloitte, they work very closely with Price Waterhouse Coopers, they work with all the main kind of centralized institutions. That's how I'll say it.
mm. I mean, besides of the World Economic Forum council member, you are also a TEDx speaker, and you do so many other things. So I wonder, what keeps you motivated and inspired to that you constantly push boundaries in your sector and outside?
Thank you for asking me that question, because I sometimes wonder if people outside of my peer group even, how do they think about their life? So, coming from a very poor background, I was raised on a council estate, like social housing in the UK in the 70s, when it was extremely racist. And I remember white little girls and boys like pushing me off my rollerblades. I broke my wrist. One of them rolled over me. And it was quite dramatic. But of course, as a kid, you don't notice any of that. But what it
Mm,
gave me was a very strong desire to have a voice. And because I
right.
wasn't the smartest girl, but I know how to communicate. And my mum and dad were extremely hippies. My mother was a model, my dad was a jazz musician, but they always gave us the responsibility that if you do something, it is your responsibility. And when I got into the media, I have done the same thing, by the way, for almost 3 decades. I have worked in television, radio, newspapers, and then in the digital entertainment space, and now in, let's call it, space,
Hmm.
the digital space for space. And everything I've done has pushed me to that point. But when you don't have access, when you don't come from an Ivy League university, when you're trying to raise money for organizations that are doing something pioneering, and people are just constantly closing the door in your face. When I started Space Hero, people laughed at me. Millionaires that I have known for decades laughed at me and said, you don't know anything about television. You don't know anything about like a global TV show, and you don't know anything about space. How are you going to achieve it? I was like, okay. Who's laughing now, dude? We raised, as I say, just under 10 million bucks, and we put this giant community together, and look where we are now. I have this insatiable appetite to be of service to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. And for me, when you do something you love, you have passion. And when you have passion, you just keep going. That's it.
Yeah, I feel it. Yeah, I can so resonate with that, right? That you need to love what you do. You really need to, even though, and there's always the controversy that say, of course, you have to then follow through, not only love it and be passionate, but actually put the work inside and what you
Absolutely.
want. But I think it makes your life so much more easier if you're really excited about what you're doing, who you're interacting with, and what you can achieve in the space. Uh, we are almost closing out from a time perspective, and I want to ask still a couple of questions, but one of them is, so if there is anybody in the audience who maybe does work in one of these in the new space economy or anything with space, and they would like to partner or become member of SpaceVrse, how do they reach out to you? Is it through your website or through your social media channel? What is the best way to get in touch with your team?
Anyway, I have LinkedIn. I do have personal, and it's all of it is monitored every day. So the website, all of it, they can do whatever they like. But I would like to say something, Andrea. One of my next let's call it passions, is to, and I have already set this up outside of my SpaceVrse career, is a fund. A fund called Sass Capital. It is a family office of my family, the Sass family,
Mm-hmm.
two sisters, myself and my sister. My sister runs a socially conscious record label, and she works with refugee camps, war-torn countries, natural crisis countries, natural disasters, and many things in between. And everything is on the blockchain. She is all about freedom technology, but she's working with a very niche market of entertainment and creative people that
Mm-hmm.
if you're in a refugee camp, but you used to be a singer or a dancer or a writer, you're so fucked it's not funny, right? Because you're just trying to survive, forget about your art. So these people really need support. So my sister and I have started a fund. It is not launched publicly, but we are seeding some very positive conversations going back to our background. My sister was the head of emerging markets at one of the biggest record labels for 16 years, Warner Records. So she knows everybody in music, and I know a lot of people in the finance, tech, entertainment, and of course now space world. And this fund will start with $5 million and will only invest in underestimated founders.
Mm-hmm.
Here is for your audience the biggest demographic of underestimated founders, which is a shocking thing to say. And until it changes, people like my organization is absolutely needed, is women. Women
Yeah.
are considered 52% of the population, and we are considered underestimated founders. And then if you're a woman of color, you're screwed. If you're a woman of color who is LGBT, you are totally screwed. And these are the people, and it doesn't matter what industry. Obviously, our industry network is in the music entertainment business with my sister and myself. I come from that industry, and the space and tech industry. But if any of your audience is looking to get some money and they're not from, I mean, we'll look at anybody. It doesn't have to be a woman. It can be anybody from an emerging market, from the global south. It can be men, women, non-binary, special needs. We are open because what we want to do is give them a proper voice.
So will it be almost like a VC where you will do micro investments
Won't
into
be
after you obviously assess the business opportunity into these different businesses?
it won't be like, it will be exactly that,
Mm-hmm.
except everything we're doing is on the blockchain, and we will be pushing Bitcoin as a very clear path forward. Fiat currency, I believe strongly, will be worthless in my lifetime. I also believe that we will be a multi-planetary species in my lifetime. I'm 50, so we've got another 50 years to go.
Awesome. And thank you for mentioning it, what you're doing with your sister, because one of my next questions would be, what's next for
Yes.
Deborah, because you're also multi-potentialite. So you can't stand with, in one space and you do multiple different things. So if obviously you said that you are in the beginning and with the $5 million funding, when do you plan to launch the SAS fund? And will you have any limitation in terms of geographical limitation because of taxation or whatever, focus? Do you have any focus in countries and industries as a 1.0, so that the audience can understand a little bit more?
Thank you. Yes. So there is no geographical restrictions at the moment. The fund will be launched, I would say, probably the third quarter of this year. Um,
Mm-hmm.
We'll have no cap on the level of investment, and we will start at $5,000 because, as you know, with micro investing, I mean, and we're not looking at that level. It's probably one or two levels above that. But the advisory board we have already put together are people who have been in this space for more than 2 or 3 decades. We are working with some very, let's say, well-known people with a lot of visibility in both the finance world, the space world, the music world, and people that your audience would know without having to look them up. So, when we come out, we will come out kicking and screaming. We want to change the structure of when I tried to raise money many, many years ago, 3 companies ago, so in my 30s, so 20 years ago, I couldn't even get in the door, even though I knew the people because I was in that industry. And I thought to myself, if I can't get in the door and I'm in Los Angeles, I'm in Silicon Valley, I know, and of course I could have a conversation with them, but it was never going any further. I thought, first of all, I better build a table and I can sit at that table. But more importantly, the 85% of every cent that comes out of an institution, as in venture capital funds, is given to white men. It's a dreadful, dreadful, dreadful matrix, but it's true. And it's scientifically proven when you commit a small fund to women in communities outside of the Western world, the whole entire communities are
Gets
affected
uplifted. Yeah.
and uplifted. Exactly.
So, so your fund will be like my podcast. You will only deal with women.
No, we will absolutely not only deal with women, but women are a huge demographic of underestimated founders. We will deal with anybody that doesn't have the same access that we have.
Right, right, right. Okay. So I have one last question for you. You know, you have a really busy life and you have so many different things to navigate. How do you balance? Because in today's world, it's so critical to have a really healthy body, healthy mind, and still be engaged in what you do from a brain perspective. So, how do you take care of your mind and on your physically of your body so that you stay strong and fit to achieve all these fantastic things you are doing?
The most important thing outside of your own mindset, I believe, my personal opinion, is physical health. I am religious about fasting, about training, about lifting weights, about walking in the sunlight without my phone, without my glasses on every morning. I have an infrared sauna blanket. I am extremely flexible in my metabolic flexibility and also with fasting. But I can't stress enough that when you eat food that is nutritionally dense, and I mean nature's food, nature's carbs. There's nothing wrong with potatoes, there's nothing wrong with rice. It is processed food and genetically modified food that if we could just stop 100% eating it, I believe that humanity would probably live hundreds more years. We are killing ourselves. All of these immune deficiencies and these chronic diseases are all cured from food. So I grow all my own vegetables. We're completely organic on my farm. But more importantly, I'm very, very active. I might spend 8 hours a day in this format, Andrea, and I still get my 10,000 steps in. And that's about 7.
Amazing. No, that's amazing, and I think that I like that we are finishing on this kind of longevity theme, because we should never understand whatever we're trying to achieve in our lives. We need to have a healthy body and healthy mind to be able to do that. So, Deborah, thank you so much for sharing your journey. It was really insightful, and I learned so much about you again, and I love your leadership. I love how passionate you are about it. Already that you're starting a new venture. It's that energy you're putting into it, and I'm super chuffed about SpaceVrse. I think this is what the society needs and the planet needs, because we need more people to be interested in space and bring more innovation and bring new technologies into space and other way around. So thank you very much. Any last thoughts which you want to leave our audience with?
I want to say one thing. Thank you very much. You are also one of my heroes in what you're doing something that, and there's lots of people doing it, but not like you, which is really great. So thank you for sorting this all out and actually doing Space Uncensored. I have a vision every year, and I call it 52 weeks of sass. And I have spent years realizing that I can't like change everything straight away. You've got to, my father used to say, how do you eat an elephant? In small little pieces or mouthful by mouthful. So my 52 weeks of SaaS is every week I declutter a room or a drawer or a cupboard in my house every week. And I'm very religious about it. But I'm just getting rid of stuff I don't need. I'm not sorting anything out, just getting rid of it.
Mm.
Every week I do something for my health. I try to lift heavier weights. I try to walk longer. I try to get in more steps, more quality sleep. And now with SAS Capital, every week I want to do something that is meaningful to bring the business to execution and to the world. And these are my small pieces that keep me going and really keep me motivated. And I think everybody should have a 52 weeks of Prazakova.
You know what? I was just thinking my surname is just not offering the same sexiness as 52 weeks of sass, because sass is almost like sassy, right? So maybe
Yeah.
I just steal the acronym or your surname and will use it like and maybe we need to invent what the SAAS would stand for, but my name is just too
That's okay.
long and just, nobody would believe me.
It's
Yours,
only yeah. It's like maybe it's 52 weeks of Praz or just
yeah,
Kova. But
something. Oh, press. No, I like the press. I like the press.
yeah.
So no, I think that that's really amazing, and I hope. I mean, we are in the second week of January, right? I hope that our listeners. I mean, this will be released maybe in 4 weeks. I hope that our listeners will still plan their 50 weeks off, uh, aka SAS, because I think it's an incredible life approach to everything what you do. Eat the elephant bite by bite. Thank you, Deborah, so much to our listener. Thank you for tuning in for this episode of Space Uncensored. Don't forget to subscribe, listen, and if you want anything about SpaceVrse, obviously under the episode you can see the post to their YouTube link and their social media. Until next time, keep aiming higher, stay curious, and keep dreaming big. I see you soon.